You're always trying to be like the happy guy, like happiest guy in the room. What is the secret to happiness? What makes you so happy all the time?
Have you seen my wife? My wife is so hot.
He's a UFC fighter, has maybe one of the best nicknames in sports, is a foster dad, and is married to America's next top model. Please welcome SmileN, Sam Alvey, to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, too. So just to jump right into the questions, you grew up in Wisconsin, right?
That's correct.
What was that like, and kind of what was your early life like there?
I grew up with loving family, great brothers, great parents, great grandfathers, parents, great everything. I grew up doing like everyone else. We played outside a lot, played some baseball. Wasn't big into video games until I got older. But yeah, just kind of did a little bit of everything. I eventually, at about 12, I moved to a lake. So I grew up on Lake Michigan. So I was hunting and fishing just about every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, growing up in Wisconsin, like you said, you're into like being outside, into sports. Was like combat sports kind of a big part of your life at that time, or did that kind of come later in life as you grew up?
No, I didn't. I've never watched combat sports. Not until I was probably 8-1 as a professional MMA fighter before I ever learned about the UFC or Pride or any of that.
So you started fighting before you had ever like watched it, like paid attention to it, like gotten into it, kind of.
I started fighting before I ever started training.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. You like took your first few fights without training like a minute, right? Like a lot of your first fights were just kind of getting there, like in the moment and just fighting.
It was probably my first 8 fights before I started training. And when I did start training, I just was training myself. I was making it up as I went. But I put a gym together, and really started just teaching myself and anyone that wanted to be taught. I was making it up.
Yeah. So your style, kind of, and your stance is very different from the like traditional kind of like commonly learned style of fighting. What makes yours so different from?
I have so many bad habits. I mean, I've got some terrible habits that I just taught myself, and it worked out just fine. People aren't used to seeing it.
It's working.
Unfortunately, they're starting to figure it. Yeah, it's worked really well. I've made a career out of bad habits. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I'm starting to put together what I've done wrong and trying to correct it a little bit, and really trying to make the second half of my career even better than my first half.
Mm-hmm. And so after those first 8 or so fights, once you started training, could you see like an improvement in your performance in each fight?
You know, not really, because I was winning before and I was winning after. So I knew how hard it was, and my conditioning. I remember I got tired in my 3rd amateur fight. I won the fight, but I got tired. So I made a big point of never being tired in a fight again. And I never have been. 15 years, I have never gassed. I've never been close to gassed. But I spent a lot of time really developing my cardio from the beginning, because that's the one thing I knew how to make better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how did you like first get into combat sports, into the fighting scene? What was leading up to your first fight like?
Leading up to my first fight is they said, "Hey, you want to fight?" And I said, "Sure." And then I went to a cage and fought. That was really it. I wish I had a better story, but that was it. I won the first round. I lost in the second round, and I didn't know the rules. So in round 1, I dropped him. He went down, his head banged off the thing, and I thought I won. So, woohoo! But that's not the way it works. He stood back up, the round ended, and then round 2, he took me down and beat the tar out of me. And I said, "Oh, okay, so there are rules involved." Yeah. And from that point on, I said, "All right, I'm hooked." I just talked to the promoter backstage. Said, "All right, put me on the next one." So then I went on the next one. I ended up fighting some guy. I'll bet you he was 350 pounds. The guy fought second, and I knocked him out in 12 seconds. Yeah, it was a great moment.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, during that first fight, even though you lost, like, in that fight, did you have kind of a moment of, like, yeah, this is what I want to do? Or, like, did you almost get, like, a high that you wanted to keep doing that?
I don't know if it was a high as much as it was a concussion. But whatever it was, I was pretty hooked by the end of the fight.
Mm-hmm. And so, next I just wanted to talk about your nickname, SmileN Sam. How, like, where did that originate from? Why are you SmileN Sam? Just give us a little insight into that.
Well, what I always planned on doing, I didn't plan on being a fighter. I stumbled into this career.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a weightlifter. I've always lifted weights. I've always been a personal trainer, and that was my goal. I wanted to have my own lifting gym, cardio, that kind of gym. When I started fighting, it was going well. I was winning and stuff, and my dad, actually, I think it was my dad, he said, hey, you've got to, we should come up with a nickname. Everyone's got a nickname. I said, oh, okay. And so we just started spitballing, and I have always been a happy fella. I've always been the happiest guy in any room. And so the Grin Reaper was mentioned for a little bit, and we kind of shot that down. And SmileN Sam got mentioned. And it was before social media. Mm-hmm. So when I did Smile *N. Because I was the generation that everything was extreme, and they'd put an X and everything. Yeah. So I went *N because I thought it looked good. And so now everyone spells it wrong. They go SmileIN, and I should have done that. It would have been easier for social media. But yeah, SmileN Sam was born, and it was out of the goal was still to have a lifting gym someday. But if I could get any notoriety for my fighting, it'd be great. Anything I could do to make people remember me a little more. I smiled a lot. My name was Sam, and it just made sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've heard on other podcasts you've been on. There's been times you've been on the ground with an opponent in a chokehold, and the ref rushes over, and you're just smiling at the ref I'm okay. Let's keep this going. Is that true?
Shoot, that was last year against Ryan Spann. He had a head and arm triangle. We were actually standing on the cage. And I learned from Mark Goddard that referees don't know what they're doing some of the time. So instead of giving a thumbs up or any of that, I just smiled at him, and then he backed off, and he knew I was fine.
All right. So, like you said, you're always trying to be the happy guy, happiest guy in the room. What is the secret to happiness? What makes you so happy all the time?
Have you seen my wife? My wife is so hot. Oh, goodness. I recommend everyone get a hot wife. The world will be a happier place if they all have a hot spouse. And so she's a big reason I grin so much.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of your wife, she's, I don't know if she's into fighting, she wants to do it, but you'll spar with her occasionally, right? And you'll
oh yeah, she outranks me in jiu-jitsu. Trying real hard to get her a fight against Paige Van Zandt in the bare knuckle boxing. Because my wife. So
you are trying to get her involved in professional fights and against other fighters.
Yeah, she's been training as long as I have been. She just, I don't know, she went a different route. And now her routes are kind of emerging. She's got that bug to get in there and then punch someone. Mm-hmm. She wants to test herself, and I want her to test herself too, but I don't want her to do it for free. We could get her a free fight, and I don't want her to get bloodied for that. If she's gonna fight, I want her to get paid. Paige Van Zandt is going down.
What's kind of that when you train with her? Is there any nervousness, you don't want to hit too hard or anything? Is there anything like that? Or
shoot, I'm not worried about her. I don't want her to hit me too hard. I know how to pull a punch. The two most dangerous people, this would be the title of your podcast, the two most dangerous people in any gym is a guy who just walks in the door and any girl ever. Because neither of them know how hard they hit. No, shoot, I can pull a punch. She doesn't know how to do it.
Okay. So leading up to the Social Gloves event that happened recently between YouTube stars and TikTok stars, you were the boxing coach, kind of the trainer for Tanner Fox leading into that, right?
Yeah, yes sir.
What was that like? And going back to your style, did you try to teach him your way of doing things or the more like traditional, common way of doing things?
So when I teach, right, so I coach all the time. I coach professionals, amateurs, super pros, beginning pros. I coach them all. I coach them the right way, but I put the Sam flair on it. I got a way that works for me, and it's not wrong anymore because I found a way to make it right. I know the right way, but I show a little bit of everything. So when I was working with Tanner, who really was, day one, walked in the door and said, "Hey, I fight in 2.5 months. Can you help me?" And I said, yes, we can do this. So I put him through as traditional a boxing camp as I could muster, that I could keep him entertained for. And then I put a couple little Sam twists on it. And he was a southpaw too, so it was easy for me.
Mm-hmm. And 2 months, that's shorter than most camps are. So did you kind of feel rushed to like cram a lot of things in, or did you kind of take it at like a normal pace and just hope that it would be enough?
You know what? I know it would be enough. I know what it takes. You know, a good camp for somebody is about 8 weeks. That's for somebody who has trained before. He hasn't trained before, but he is a natural athlete. He really was gifted. And so, I mean, getting somebody's feet and hands to work together is like really difficult. And he picked up on that really quick. I mean, he started getting his body to work together like a boxer's body would. So at first I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe his shoulders would be too high, he'd be real stiff. He wouldn't, but he came in fairly, pretty athletic with everything. So I was able to help mold that into a fantastic boxer. And it's a real shame that the fight didn't end up going through because I really would have enjoyed watching him knock Ryland out.
Yeah, and so the fight doesn't end up happening. It's been very public that Tanner was very upset about that and didn't have the best reaction to that. What was your reaction once it became clear that it wasn't going to happen?
I was so hurt for him, and it was the promotion's fault. So the promotion never had a weight class. They said, all right, as long as you're within 9 pounds. So Ryland was going to get under 140, and Tanner was going to get over 130, and it was going to go like that. And then this is crazy. The week of the fight, Tanner was going to get there like Wednesday morning, and his flight got canceled. Got rescheduled. He got on the flight, landed in Chicago. Then that flight got canceled from Chicago. He ended up, by the time he got to weigh-ins, he had been on a plane for, close to 25 hours. He got in, he went to sleep for just a couple hours, got up, stepped on the scale. So he lost a bunch of weight. We had trained hard. He's a smaller guy. He was going to be the smaller opponent. But when he and Ryland stepped on the scale, there was that close to 20-pound difference. And it was just the commission wouldn't let it happen. You know, actually, I think the commission might have let it happen, but Ryland, like immediately,
he kind of accepted their reasoning for not letting it happen and just kind of rolled with that and was like, yeah, I guess it can't happen. And like,
yeah, Tanner at first says, well, there's 20 pounds. That's a big deal. Oh, and he says, let me just think about it for a minute. And as he's thinking about it for a minute, Ryland just goes to the internet and says, oh, Tanner's a sissy and he's dodging me and blah, 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 blah. And he just made it a big deal, at which point all of the world knew that there was a 20-pound difference between them. At that point, the commission couldn't let the fight happen.
It was too
even though I think we could have. It was too big a weight difference, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm sure you obviously got a very inside look at what Tanner's training was like, what kind of fighter he was. You might not have as much information on Ryland, but who do you think would have won the fight had it gone through?
Tanner would have stopped him early. Ryland didn't train. Ryland's kind of that fat skinny, where you're not really athletic, and you look at what he's famous for is he flips off the camera a lot. That's kind of what his thing is. He hangs out with popular people, flips off the camera. That's kind of what Ryland does. And he showed up to weigh-ins kind of looking like he didn't train. He showed up to weigh-ins and he looked sloppy. I think Tanner would have put him down early in the second.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So like that, Social Gloves, like other events we've seen, it's becoming much more normalized to see like these celebrities, especially internet celebrities, but just general celebrities, kind of make their way into the combat sports world. What are your thoughts on that? Good for the sport, bad for the sport? What are your thoughts on that?
I love it for the sport. I'm a guy. I never watched fighting. I just enjoyed fighting. Whether I was good or whether I was bad or whether the fight I was watching was good or bad, I just like watching fighting. So while we watch the Logan Pauls and Jake Pauls, who are not that good at fighting, they're better than other YouTube stars, but they're not that good at fighting. It's still fun. It's a fun fight to watch. Guys that are swinging from the hips, closing their eyes, just doing what they can. It's still fun to watch. So when you watch like a TikTok versus YouTube kind of thing, are they the most athletic or boxing professional, kind of guys? No, but it's
that's
still
what makes it fun to watch.
Still fun to watch
because you don't really know.
And at the end of the day, it brings more eyes to the sport. It'll increase everyone's paycheck a little bit, and I think it's overall good for the sport.
I can say for me, from when I barely followed combat sports, I knew kind of Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Conor McGregor. That's about where my knowledge ended. And then once we've had a more kind of public view on it, I've definitely learned more and definitely have a better understanding of it. And I've seen more, watched more, learned more about it. And so
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So there's news of this upcoming fight between Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. Do you kind of have an early prediction for that?
Yeah, I called it immediately. Woodley's going to win this fight whenever he wants. I get nervous saying that because that's a big prediction. But Woodley's a fighter. Woodley knows how to fight. Woodley has knocked out incredible fighters.
He has the experience.
No, that was right. That was prime Woodley. It's not prime Woodley anymore. However, Woodley's also going to get paid more money than he has ever made in this one fight. And there's a clause that if Woodley wins, there's an automatic rematch. Woodley wants to win this, get the automatic rematch, win that one, and then retire off.
That one.
Yeah. So I think it was a bad call on Jake Paul. Yeah, Jake Paul to call Woodley out. I understand what he's doing. He's calling out past his prime wrestler who fought MMA.
Yeah.
Right. There's the chance Jake wins, just not a great chance.
Mm-hmm. So you're into combat sports. You're in UFC. Let's say a public figure, kind of like Jake Paul, called you out into a fight. Would you accept that fight? Would you kind of accept this fight between a celebrity or someone from the internet?
Oh hell yeah, yeah, in a heartbeat. I love fighting. I love fighting MMA. I love this, but at the end of the day, I'm a prize fighter. I fight for a prize. If the prize is going to be even bigger, boxing Jake Paul or beating up Logan Paul, I'm in. And then I can always go back and finish my career in MMA. But getting that big payday would just it'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm. So you see, from what I know at least, the kind of traditional fighting career is you come up, you do lots of fights against kind of these not very well known fighters that are not as good fighters, and then eventually you gradually go up the ladder. And then you look at these celebrities, you see Logan Paul fighting, it was Floyd Mayweather in his fourth ever fight. What do you think of someone who's just immediately going for the top, going for big fighters, well-known fighters, right off the bat once they start training?
Well, you got to understand, the reason we fight the lower level fights, even in the UFC, you start fighting guys you don't know, it's to build a name for yourself. As you build a name for yourself, people want to watch you fight. It's all about making people want to watch you fight. Logan Paul may not have built his name in fighting, but he built his name in YouTube. I mean, he is revolutionized it. He has spent his entire life building this YouTube brand for himself that makes him worthy. I mean, people want to see him fight. Jake Paul kind of piggybacked off Logan, but same basic idea. They build their name in a different area and then go into that. And you'll see fighters do that too. Mighty Mouse is a great one. He built his name in MMA, being one of the greatest champions ever, and then he transitioned to doing Twitch or video gaming online and stuff. Why would anyone want to watch Mighty Mouse if he didn't build his name doing something else? Unless he had built his name doing Twitches prior to that. So it's just building your name in something to where people want to see you do what you want to do, and then taking it to that next level.
Yeah. And so a lot of these events with celebrities have been boxing, and that's kind of been the go-to. Would you be interested in seeing like MMA, for example, or UFC between celebrities?
No. The problem is MMA has got more to it. I don't think it's harder than boxing. Boxing's simple. Simple is the wrong word, but yeah, I hope you know what I mean. You have to be better with just two tools. In MMA and the UFC and Bellator stuff like that, if one of the guys has 3 years of wrestling in high school, he will beat everyone else. So it's like Logan Paul, Jake Paul. At least Logan Paul was a good high school wrestler. He would beat most other YouTube guys because he has basic wrestling. Boxing is something that you likely didn't do in all that much in high school, and then become a YouTube sensation. It's likely something that you picked up along the lines.
It's definitely a much less.
Just a little bit of wrestling will beat most people.
Yeah, it's definitely a much less common thing in like high school, college than wrestling is.
Right.
Yeah. So, is there like, if you gotta like pick any fighter to have a match against, is there someone that you've been like really wanting to go against, like you think would be a good matchup for you?
I love the matchup against Darren Till. I've been slumping a little bit. I shoot a lot of it. I got to break my slump. And I break this slump on July 31st. And after that, I'll win another 2 more fights. So that's 3 fights in a row I'm going to win. And then I'm fighting Darren Till.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that pans out. I do hope that happens. I hope it's 3 wins in a row. That sounds great. So. And
yes, sir. That is my plan.
And so, usually, at least from the public perspective, you can tell me if it's a bit different being a fighter. But is it kind of, once you finish a fight, like, you've done the fight, and then, like, almost immediately, not quite, but almost immediately you start looking for another fight, you start planning that one. Like, is it a very fast-paced thing, or do you kind of take your time between each fight?
For me, I'm going to fight as fast as I can. I love fighting, and I've got more fights than most fighters. I enjoy it, and I like working out too. I like training. It's easier for me to train if I have a goal at the end of it.
So you train, you work out, you want these fights as fast as possible. What's it like balancing that along with an at-home life with multiple kids? I don't really balance it. It just works itself out. I don't consider it, 2 different things. I just make it happen. And that being said, my wife, Britt McKee, she's just second to none. And I couldn't do any of this without her. So when I'm having a day where I'm just getting beat up by everyone, man, I was at Syndicate today and I went with this Chechnyan fella, Albert is his name, and he just mauled me. I mean, he khabibed me for 5 minutes, and he was very friendly with the whole time, but he just mauled me. I get home, I just, well, shit, I quit fighting because that was terrible. And so days like that, and they'll happen in every fighter's career. Days like that will happen, and my wife is there to help pick me up. She's there to wipe the sweat off my brow and pick up the slack where I'm slacking. Mm-hmm. And so when you're kind of these fights that you take, they kind of happen in different arenas, different locations all over. Do your kids or your family usually watch your fights? Like, do you let them watch the fights?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
shoot, my kids have been ringside just about every fight I've ever had. COVID's the son of a gun because my kids can't go. Mm-hmm. No, they love it.
Mm-hmm. And have any of them ever expressed like an interest in getting into fighting, into wanting to be like their dad, like start fighting at a young age, like want that to be something they do in life?
Yeah, but my kids are all young. It's 8, 6, 4, 1, and 1. Mm-hmm. So they're all young. They all want to be like dad. They all want to be like the fireman. They all want to do Ninja Warrior 2. They want to do everything. Mm-hmm. They all train. And if I have my way, they'll be able to beat up the best in the world, but they're never going to fight themselves.
So you won't let them fight themselves, but you would support, like, if one of them wanted to go into, like, a career of fighting or a career of UFC.
Yeah, I don't want them to. It's a lot of work for a big risk. Even the UFC, making it to the UFC is fantastic. Do you know how many fighters get a third fight in the UFC? Not many of them. Yeah. Most of them are like 2-0, 0-2, and then they're cut. And it's just it's a big statistic like that. So even working your butt off, doing everything right, getting in there and getting a third fight is difficult. You have to have what the UFC is looking for, and you have to win. So there's a ton of luck involved. I've been very lucky in that the fights I've won, I've worked my butt off, and I'm glad I won them. The fights I lost, some of them I should have won. Some of them the judges disagreed with me, and everybody else on the planet. But there's a lot of luck involved in the sport. I would much rather be really good at baseball or tennis or golf, a sport where there's a lot less luck involved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, back towards the start of this interview, you were saying when you were young, you spent time outside, wasn't really too big into video games until later in life. What was the feeling like when you got the news that you were being put into the UFC video game?
Ooh, that was pretty great. I actually asked to do that. So we were at a UFC meeting, and there was me and 30 of my closest strangers in this room, other UFC fighters. And Zuffa still owned the company at the time, and one of the Zuffa brothers, I don't remember which one, was up front, and he was taking questions. And everybody's question was pretty rude. It was rude. Everyone's like, how do I make more money? Why is Reebok not paying me more? And everybody's question was, give me more, give me more. And so I just waited my turn, hand was up, and he said, all right, Sam, what's up? And I said, listen, guys, you have given me so much. You have given me a career. You have helped me marry my wife. I'm now world famous because of it. It has been a goal of my life to be in a video game. How can I get put in the video game? Which point the room erupted. They thought it was the greatest question anyone had ever asked. And he said, you know what, we'll be in touch. We'll talk. He said, oh, okay, fantastic. And then he kept taking questions, and everyone's question or comment was kind of like, and then his accountant, who was on the stage with him, 15 minutes later, tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then Zuffa, hey, Sam, you're in the video game. I said, oh, my God.
That fast.
Now I'm in 3 video games, UFC 2, 3, and 4. It was just the greatest moment of my life right then.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you play the video games? Do you ever play as yourself in the video games? If so, what's that kind of like?
I have played all the video games, and I only play as myself, but I don't play those video games very often. I more have them because I'm in them. I don't play them at all. Mm-hmm. But when I play them, I only play as myself.
Mm-hmm. And do your kids play as you as well on those, or are they kind of?
No, I keep my kids off all tablets, all everything. I don't let them do any of that. They don't want to, but I don't let them do any of it.
You kind of not. I don't know if it's quite true. So correct me if I'm wrong, but almost model after your own child to spend time outside, kind of other things other than tablets, screens, electronics, which nowadays seems to be everyone's on them all the time. And so I think it's definitely nice to kind of have time off, especially if that's how most of your time is spent, like you're describing.
Yeah, but I've always been an outgoing guy. I've always been a guy that likes to do stuff. And if my kids are on a tablet or on a video game or on a this or that, I could be doing something with them right then. I could be playing baseball. I could be doing something with them. And so if they're on a tablet, it's to distract them from bothering me, and I don't want that. I don't want to be a parent that does that. I've been teaching kids classes for my entire adult life in MMA and jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. And every day at the beginning of class, I say, hey, tell me, kids, what have you done over the week? And they'll tell me, and some kids say, I played at the park, I went swimming, and then I'll always have a kid who said, well, I played Roblox for 6 hours last night. And I love the kid, love the parents, but that's just, I don't ever want the kid that says that is proud of playing a video game like that. Not when they're so young. They could be doing anything else. I mean, Roblox is doing nothing for you, or any video game. It's doing nothing for you. When I play video games, I like my Switch because I can bring it with me. I understand that when I'm playing it, I'm being a lazy sack of snot. Um, but I also realize that there are times that I need to just calm down so I can work out again later. Um, and my kids aren't there yet. They don't have. They're never beat up like I am. So when they start getting beat up, I'll let them relax with some video games or tablet stuff. But for now, they should be outside licking bugs and chewing on rocks.
But you say you always want to do something. You always want to train. You always want to go out. Do you ever experience some kind of like tiredness, burnout, exhaustion from that?
Yes and no. I'm like, for me, no. I can always do more. But if somebody else were to feel the way I feel, they would be done for a week. And it's just the life of a fighter. We are a different breed of people, and it's not just me. It's I have fighter buddies that just they work themselves to that. I mean, literally sweat and blood, and then they go home and they just kind of collapse until it's time to do it again, or they'll go and they'll do their run, or they'll do this. There's always something I can be doing to get better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for this interview. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. Shout out anything you have, social medias, gyms, clothing, if you have anything like that, upcoming fights, anything like that, feel free to promote all that.
Yeah. So one, I love TikTok. It is my guilty pleasure. I love TikTok, and so I'm at SmileN Sam on TikTok. I'm at SmileN Sam on everything. SmileNSam, and I'll give you a behind the scenes look at the UFC. I'll talk about fights. I'll talk about a little. I have so much fun on TikTok. Y'all should join me on there.
Okay, yeah, and I'll make sure to leave a link to your Instagram down below as well. Maybe I'll add the TikTok too. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, my friend. Thank you very much.